Hey guys, I'm back. I'm upside down. Look at that. So I had an idea for a video, which is why I'm doing a video. Okay, glad we got that out of the way. So I was cleaning up and I found this old beat up Kershaw blur in a box. And you know, to its credit, it still works just fine. But you can see this has some battle scars. This has been through some life. Missing a screw, missing a standoff. It is worn. I don't even remember where I got it, honestly. But I thought that this would be a great subject for a repair and refurbish video. Yeah? What do you guys think? So, I think what we're going to do is we are going to break this guy down. We're going to clean it up. We're going to take a look at what makes the blur tick. We're going to take a look at the Speed Safe spring, because I'm always saying Speed Safe is my favorite spring assist system in knives. So we'll look at that. We will, you know, take it all apart. We will. Oh, look at the shadows. God, I have horrible lighting right now. Sorry. But we'll get this thing all disassembled. We'll clean it all up. We will take it to the shop. We'll you know, we'll give it a whole new look. We'll not only clean it and refurbish it, but we'll make it look kind of like brand new. We'll use the lasers. We'll put the logos back on. We will give this guy a new sort of, you know, maybe not brand new because it'll still be missing a screw and a spacer because I just don't have one that'll fit in. But kind of give it a new life. I think that'll be kind of interesting to see what we end up with. And I'm not going to go super fancy on it either. The Blur is a good, dependable knife. It's been around forever. So I figured it would be fun to just sort of take one apart and see how it works and see what we can do with it. See if I can get the right size bit to take it apart. That would be a good first step. First thing we'll do is we'll take off this clip. That clip was probably blackened originally. What I should be doing right now is I should have a project box here so as not to lose all the parts. Hang on. Alright, so clip and the clip screws right there. I think we'll go with the pivot now. What are we going to need to get that pivot out of there? That'll fit. Pivot screw right there. And I have a feeling that the rest of the frame screws are also going to be T6. Yeah. Pretty standard. So, you got a spring assist blade. It always is safer and helps you a little bit when you loosen the tension. Press on the lock a little bit when you're removing the pit. Ooh, it's grindy in there. It's making some noise. Now that's not going to come out yet because the spring is still in there. But there's no tension on that spring now at all. There we go. And we've got our two standoffs here. They'll go in there. This is our actual spring. This is what does all the spring action. And you'll notice we've got two different size washers. One for the spring side, which is small, so we'll remember that. We're going to wash that off. It's got some grease on it. And the bigger one for the lock side. We've got the liner inset into the metal scale here. Let's get our stop pin out before we lose that and it falls away somewhere. This is very, very dirty. Now, can we get this to come loose? Does it come loose? I'm not sure if it does, or if it's affixed in there. Nope, it comes out. Cool. Our blade. Wow, that's been quite used. And then the other side. And then our spring and all the milling out for that spring. And a new Kershaw knife usually has some amount of grease in there too. So we get some acetone and paper towels and we'll clean that all out. Before we acetone it, we're just going to give a wipe to get any dust or anything like that off. So we're not making piles of dust mud. You know. course, are washers. They're going to be pretty gross if I can get them. There we go. And this guy. Alright, and the spring. Clean that up too. And do the pivot. It's pretty filthy. Pivot screw, just get a little cleaning too. Might as well do the stop pin as well. Now the spacers and the frame screws I'm not going to worry about right now. This is 100% acetone. And I'm just using this because it will get away any grease, grime, anything that we have on here that we want to clean up. Because you don't want to put this through the sandblaster with anything, you know, that's going to attract the grit and cause it to bunch up or anything like that. Now, I'm not worried about fingerprint, you know, finger oils or anything right now. We're going to sweat it out in the oven before we recoat it or anything. So I don't mind using bare hands at this point, and I will use a grease remover when I'm in the shop later on. So this is just to get parts cleaned off. This is not, you know, the final cleaning that they're going to have. The way this whole thing works, the way the speed safe works, is when you have your pivot, and the speed safe fits in this side, so we'll just... No, I take it back. The speed safe fits in this side. So we'll just replicate here. The spring sits underneath this metal part right here. There's a little track there for that spring to hold on to. And there's a little, there's the detent. So see the detent hole right there for the detent on the lock, but that bigger hole is for the spring. So when you put this together, you got to make sure that you get the spring in that little hole. And as this closes, you see right now we've got spring pressure. So the spring is actually, let's see if I can get this off without messing up where the spring is. Probably not, but I can just position it again. The spring bites in to that little notch right there. And so when you close the knife, it's pressing the spring. See how it's compressing the spring there? It's compressing that torsion bar. And that's what gives this the spring pressure. It's a very simple system, but it's really effective. And it doesn't overpressure the system. It always gives you a really reliable snap outwards. They're not the only ones to use a torsion bar system, but the way they have it set up is always really well tuned and everything. One thing I'm wondering is that the Blur has this kind of rubbery coating there on the handles, and if we're going to sandblast and recoat, does that come out, or do I have to mask over that? I'm not sure. Doesn't seem like it's something I can take off, so I can either sandblast right over that, or coat right over it. I might have to mask all the way over that though when I'm working on it. So basic disassembly is pretty easy, piece of cake in fact. So I'm going to put the main pieces, all the pieces, forget it, there's nothing main about it. I'm going to put all the pieces back in the project box here. And I am going to get this to the shop where we are going to get it set up for the sandblasting, for the recoating, and to get this thing looking nice and new and functioning like a, looking and functioning like a brand new knife. Okay, so we got blade, we got scales. I was able to take off this stuff. I was not sure if it was going to come off or what it was, but it turns out it's just like a rubbery, I don't know, mini rhino lining, whatever it is, held on by some kind of glue. It was not easy to get started. Once you get started, it peels right off. You got to get up under it though and peel it. And now I want to get this off before I take it to the blaster because under super high pressure, that stuff probably comes right off. But what also could happen is, under regular pressure, we don't want to destroy the metal. We just want to blast the surface to get to the substrate so that we can put a new coating on it. At that lower pressure, it could just junk up on that stickiness right there. You know, at a much higher pressure, it blasts it right off, but that also could do some serious damage to the aluminum, and we don't want to cause pits or anything like that. So I'm not sure what the glue is that they use, but we'll be able to glue it right back down when it's all done, which is kind of cool. So I can actually take this rubber stuff, I can wash it, clean it up, and then glue it back down when we're done. So got all the screws, got the clip, got the blade, and the scales. I'm ready to take everything over to get it ready, dressed up for blasting and stuff like that, and see what we come up with after that part. So went over to our mix table, and a little lacquer thinner took that stuff right off. I mean, right off. And you can actually see this was the original nice finish underneath when, you know, before it got all scuffed up and worn up and stuff. So I think I have some ideas. We are doing in the shop now a competition composite bow. Sorry, we're doing in the shop right now a competition compound bow for an Air Force fellow. And the blue he picked is really gorgeous. And I think I'm going to do a combination blue-green now that I looked at it on this knife. Something else that I noticed, whoever had it before me tried to do this jimping here. I think I'm going to try to fix that up a little bit before I take it to the blast cabinet and do the blasting. So I'm going to fix that up, and then I'm going to take these in to get them all blasted, and then we'll get the blasting, and then we'll sweat this, you know, to get any kind of residual oils or anything out of it, and then we'll get it all coated. One of the things that's really challenging about working with any kind of rubber like this, whether it's, you know, synthetic or real, well, you never know if it's synthetic or real, but a lot of the times you never know what kind of chemicals it's going to have a weird reaction to. So cleaning it up can be kind of a challenge. You know, using something like acetone or lacquer thinner, while probably the quickest way to remove any kind of dirt and grime or you know, whatever's on the back, it's easy. It's probably sometimes the quickest way to dissolve your rubber too. And I've made that mistake. There's some synthetic plastics, there's some natural formulations of rubber and plastics too that will just turn gummy and start to dissolve and turn into a sticky, gooey mess when you mix it in those kind of chemicals. So what I'm doing to clean this up is just a medium bristled paintbrush, and this is some dish soap and kind of warm, not quite hot, a little warmer than just lukewarm, but just plain water and soap, just because I know it's going to be mild enough to not damage whatever this is. It's probably a synthetic rubber. I doubt it's, you know, a natural rubber product. It's probably not cost effective for them to use. But I want to be gentle with it because it's probably a little bit older based on, you know, the condition of that knife. But I do want to try to clean it up a little bit. You know, I don't want to put a dirty, disgusting thing back on the handle of that knife since it's going to be nice and new and pretty looking. I don't want to take a hard, rough brush and risk tearing it up. But I also do want to try to actually clean out the grooves of this rubber and clean as much of the residue of that glue off the back as I can, so that when we glue it back, it's got something good to stick onto, you know, like the surface of the actual surface of the rubber itself. So this is going to be a little time-consuming process. It's probably going to take me a little bit, a few cycles of washing and rinsing to see how clean I can get it. But if you really want to restore, you know, sometimes this is what you got to go through. So I'll be in the kitchen scrubbing pieces for a little bit. But hopefully, you know, it'll be worth it in the end if this really comes nice and clean and gives us a really good fresh look overlaid onto the aluminum of those handles. These little rubber guys are scrubbed and cleaned. I used Goof Off, and Goof Off ended up getting all that yucky stuff off. So these parts are flashed. They're not cured. So they're coated. They went in the oven for 15 minutes at a lower temperature just to harden the Cerakote, but it's not cured. It's not ready to go yet. They need to go in at a higher temperature for a longer time. Went with Ridgeway Blue for the scales, Elite Series Blackout for the blade, which looks really nice right there. And then for all the hardware and accessories and everything, my favorite Cobalt, which is going to give it a nice accent look. So really all we have to do now is cure the Cerakote, find a good, clean way to put the rubber bits back on there. And then we got to do a little lasering to put the Kershaw logo back on there, put some elements back on the blade, and we are going to have ourselves a brand new looking Kershaw blur ready to go. So I've got some work to do, getting stuff in the oven and getting it all set up, and then we'll be in front of the laser to watch that fun little meow 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 meow. Cerakote is all cured, and I'm about to do some lasering. The saga of getting this logo exactly right for the blur was... I'm only telling you because I'm so proud of finally getting it. So I've looked online for the SpeedSafe, Kershaw SpeedSafe USA logo. Couldn't find it. I tried to work with some screenshots from other knives. Couldn't get one to actually convert into the proper file. I finally ended up having to line up a picture of my Kershaw leak because it was a nice flat black with perfectly, contrasting white text. When I finally got that, though, then I had to convert it into negative, so then it was a white background with black text, and then crop it, and then adjust it, and then finally then put it through the converter from JPEG file to an SVG file for the laser. The fact that this might actually work is blowing my mind. It was literally, I'm not kidding, it was hours on the computer just trying to get this, and I'm really hoping it works. So, everybody cross your fingers as we're about to try to put this logo back on this scale. Because we don't want to burn and darken it too much, we're going to go in little bits here. Okay? I have to adjust the focal point of the laser a little bit to get it even. Unfortunately, this is the very best I'm going to be able to do. It's not going to be totally clean. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna be happy with what we got right there. So it's not the cleanest image to work from, but at least we've got it back on the knife. Let's go get this whole thing assembled. I'm gonna get our rubber overlays on with just a dab of Gorilla Glue and these hopeful little spreading sticks for each one. I'll use this little guy to spread it around. Make sure we've got glue everywhere we need it, but not so much that it's going to squeeze out and mar up our finish like I just did right there. Get our first one pressed into place. I'm finishing this video up in the laser room because it is the only quiet place in this shop right now. So, blade is finished. I lasered on the logos, which you can't see because it's in the shadow right now, but the original KI logos, and then I put the Patriot Armory and Doc P on the front. Pretty nice looking. I used clay to mask off those crazy serrations so we would still have them. And I have to do a final blade honing as well. So I did, a basic masking, and even though there's some rough edges on it, that's all going to go away and be nice and even. when I sharpen that up and hone it up. So I'm not really that worried about it being perfect now, because it will get perfect when I put it on some diamond stones and give it a nice, pretty mirror, shiny, sharp finish. But let's get this all back together so we can see the end result. So I'm going to be using some Vortex friction guard just as an oil. So mainly, we use this in guns, but it works really well on knives too. So we're going to put just a little bit of oil in here. Not a whole lot, but we want that spring to have some freedom of movement. Just want to eliminate friction for that spring, that's all. So I'll put that in here, and then we will place the inset liner over it. This is where putting it back together becomes a little bit tricky. Because the pivot actually goes back on this side. And now that everything's Cerakoted, tolerances are going to be a little tiny bit tighter. When you've got stop pins and you've got little pins and you've got pivots and everything to work out all at once, sometimes a piece of tape is pretty helpful to help you hold that in place while you line everything up. Unless you've got like 4 hands to do it with. Got that spring tension on there, so we've got everything lined up. Now we can start putting in our spacers and getting this thing back together, and that's going to hold it all tight for us. With a little messing around and test fitting these screws in different places, not only is it working, the blade is no longer rubbing against the scale. The centering is off. It's still off, but there's space. It works perfectly. You no longer hear the blade rubbing against the scale side. So I'm wondering if I get another screw and another spacer and I tighten it just perfectly, will that move that centering over just a little bit more? I don't know. But as it was, there was a horrible scratch on the blade surface from scraping that scale. And I have gotten it just enough to where it doesn't do that now. So I think this is a successful refurbish. It looks good. I like it. Got the markings back on where it needed to be. I'll finish the blade up, but it's one of the advantages of having all the cool stuff in the shop. So what do you guys think? Do you like this? Do you like the look of it? Do you like the way it turned out? I'm pretty happy with it. What do you guys think? I love the cobalt. I love the cobalt accents on all the hardware with the blue. And I don't know, maybe I should have done the blade in cobalt instead of going with just, returning it to black, but I like the black. The black blade is a kind of a classic look. So anyway, your opinions. What do you think? Cool project? Not a cool project? Want to see more stuff like this? It's a lot of fun for me to do. I really enjoy taking old beat up stuff and making it look new again. So, thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. You guys are always saying, oh, by the way, the jimping. Yeah, got the jimping looking nice and straight and even across the top. So, but I hope you guys really liked seeing this. You guys are always saying you want to see more in the shop stuff. So this is not a customer or anything. This is just something I wanted to do. Just to do it. I'm happy I did it. All right, guys. Remember, I appreciate every single one of you. You're all absolutely awesome. And I will be back again real soon.